that time again, Alum time. In each episode, we will bring you personal interviews with some of the most interesting and accomplished University of Pennsylvania alums. I'm Aymen, and I will ask the questions you've all been waiting to ask our guest alum, along with the rest of the Alum Time team. We will work to capture his thoughts on life at Penn, life in the real world, and how to be successful. Okay, so we have today with us Randy Rayess, who is the co-founder of VenturePact, one of the top 20 startups in Philadelphia. Thank you so much, Randy, for joining me today. It's a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you.
So this is actually going to be an extremely interesting interview, especially since you recently left the Penn bubble for the real world. How do you feel?
It feels great. It feels great. I think the team we're working with is phenomenal, and we're really excited about the problem we're solving, or we're attempting to solve. So we've really enjoyed working on it.
Do you think Penn prepared you well for the real world?
So I think it depends on how you take advantage of your time at Penn. I think both myself and my business partner we did not kind of take the traditional path where you kind of come to college and you spend most of your time just studying. We made sure to take the right classes and to leverage the right events and to be very active. So I think that Penn prepared us pretty well for some of the challenges that come up as a startup. But you really only understand them when you actually experience leading a team. You actually experience working and selling to clients and servicing clients. So I think the experience is always going to be a lot better, but I think if you leverage Penn properly, then you can get some value out of it.
Oh, that's really nice to hear. So tell me, what inspired the idea of VenturePact, your startup?
So there's a few things. I mean, the key was that my business partner and myself had worked at technology companies before. And we then actually both went into the investing space. And when you invest in tech companies, you get this amazing perspective because you get to see many companies and you get to understand how those companies operate and the challenges they face. So that was one of the great things about our experience. And so what we realized was that technology was a common problem, especially software development. So we just saw the demand for software growing, and the supply of tech talent and quality tech talent was not able to service the growing demand. And so we thought a lot about how should we address that problem, and that's when we started to get more excited about the specific issue.
So you just mentioned that you worked at private equity before you started VenturePact. So was it a difficult decision to leave to work towards VenturePact and devote your full time to VenturePact?
So it's always, whenever you're doing something kind of somewhat non-traditional, it's always a challenge because, people will always ask you, why did you make that decision? What was the purpose? What was the reason you made it? For us, I felt a pull to VenturePact that I didn't feel I liked my experience in private equity, but I didn't love it in the way that I loved VenturePact. That we just had a lot of passion behind what we were doing. And the main reason the main way to think about the decision was I said there's a regret minimization framework that Jeff Bezos kind of talks a lot about, and the idea is that when make your decision instead of saying I'm gonna look today at this decision looking forward, change your perspective. Put yourself in the shoes of your own person as an 80-year-old, and then look back at your life. And if you put yourself in the shoes of an 80-year-old, yourself as an 80-year-old, you try to minimize the regrets you would have had if you were to remake that decision, you would always go with the more riskier option. Because when you change your perspective, you now have changed your risk tolerance. Because you realize that it's a drop in the bucket. It's a small decision. And so I think that change of perspective helps you be more risk tolerant.
No, talking about risk actually, tell me something. Do you feel that it's Where do you draw the line? Because I'm sure a lot of Penn students have great ideas and they want to implement ideas and they want to execute the idea. But it's very difficult sometimes to take that risk that you're talking about, because you never know if that's going to be something that will become self-sustaining. Is it going to be something that's going to be successful? So, and students also tend to leave college, drop out of college, and want to devote their time to their startups and their ideas, to work on those ideas. Do you feel that's something that should be done?
So I think of startups as experiments. So you're basically running experiments. And I think most of life is kind of like you're running many experiments. So the goal is that if the first experiment that you run doesn't work, that's not a bad thing, right? You still have more experiments to run, and the options that were available to you before you ran that experiment are still available. So people have this thought process that I will either do a startup or go into investment banking or consulting. Those are my three options.
Yeah.
If I do a startup, I can no longer do anything else ever again. And if it fails, my life is over. That's kind of the perspective people have. In reality, a startup provides you with an amazing learning experience, regardless of what happens. There is a very, very low probability of success. But the learning that you will get and the exposure that you will get is unparalleled in any other career path. So I think this kind of perception of risk is a lot higher than it should be.
What would you tell your college self if you had the chance?
I would have stressed on the importance of making sure to attend as many events as possible, making sure to be out of your dorm room, being active in the community, because that's the value of college. It's being co-located with a group of very talented people. It's having the ability to go to a Wharton leadership lecture where the CEO of some Fortune 500 company is coming to give a talk. And it would surprise me when I would go to these events, and sometimes an amazing speaker was there, but the crowd, there wasn't that many people in the audience, either because it wasn't well publicized or because they were busy studying so they can prepare to go out on a Thursday night. Whereas in reality, you have to have your priorities very clear, and actually studying for classes in the long term is not what's unique about college, right? The content that you get in college, it's great, but that's not what's unique. In today's world, you can get the content that you're studying, you can get it at any point in time after you graduate. What's unique to Penn is the co-location of the brilliant people. It's the fact that all these amazing, talented leaders and alumni are coming back to campus to talk to you.
Like you.
Thank you. But so there's so much that you can learn from these people. And I just remember that it's kind of, people come and they just talk gold. Like, people say things that are super relevant, and there's a lot of people underestimate the value of these things. So I strongly believe that take every minute that you're spending in your dorm room studying and question it critically. Is this the right use of my time? Am I taking advantage of Penn? Or am I doing something that I could be doing at any point in time in the future? And that's the key recommendation I would have to anyone.
We have with us Kush. He's the president of the Biomedical Engineering Society and the co-vice president of Conference in the Technology Entrepreneurship Club. Welcome, Kush. Go ahead.
Thank you. So, Randy, thank you so much for coming. You recently mentioned that the team is critical for the success of any company, especially startups, as well as the culture. So I was wondering, how exactly do you help people acclimatize and integrate in the culture you're currently developing?
So culture is extremely, extremely important, and that ties in a lot with kind of the values of the company. So the first part is having very clear understanding of what your values are. So for us, key values are everyone in the company has to have a sense of urgency, has to understand persistence, has to have a very positive attitude and approach to problem solving. We want people who are passionate about the mission that we're trying to work on. We're trying to solve and help businesses better leverage technology. both in the way they internally operate and the way they serve their customer. So we want people who kind of fully align with our mission, people who are motivated by it. So first you have to have those values clearly ingrained in everyone's mind and everyone understands them. The second part is when you're hiring, you want to screen for people that align with those values. So you want to understand, do people get a sense of, do they have a sense of urgency? Are they persistent? All these specific things. You want to ask smart questions to get a sense, do they fit those values? So first is have the values to be very clear. Second is screen for them. Third is reward people based on those values. So every time you give a feedback session, it's not, let's just talk about performance. That's half of the feedback session. The other part is reward and provide feedback on those values. How are you performing relative to those values? And now it's become integrated into you started to make it more integrated. But really, culture is not what is said by the leader. Culture is what you see when you walk into the office. And that's when you've done a good job hiring and when it's become ingrained in culture. Because as the company grows, it's no longer a function of the first 3-4 people who have been with the company for so long, so they have an emotional attachment to it. Culture is really hard when you're scaling. Because now there are people that you don't even know who their name is. I mean, over time, you don't even know everyone's name. And so that becomes, the culture kind of takes on a whole life of its own. So that's the challenge with cultures. How do you, at the beginning, it's hard to kind of make sure it's clear and it's built. And then how do you scale culture as the company scales? That's a tough problem.
Thank you, Kush, for joining us. And thank you, Randy, for being on the show. It was a pleasure having you. That's all the time we have. See you next time on Alum Time.